thank you for being such a wonderful audience and staying to hear Christine. Christine just got here a couple of days ago because tomorrow is B-Day and 1 Billion Rising Day. Woohoo! And I just want you to know the risings have already started, and because they started, on the other side of the globe. So we're seeing the Philippines rise, and Mongolia rise, and India. It's amazing. And then tomorrow's going to be an incredible day. But I thought I'd begin right now. I'll just do a little introduction about Christine. Christine has been a long-time activist in the Congo. She was born there, and she could have left at any time, and she's really given her life to her country, and particularly the women of her country. And she's been the director of City of Joy for 8 years? 9 years? 8 years? Yes, I think it's 8. Yeah. No, 2007, is it 10 years? Anyway, a long time. But I was just going to start by asking her how she felt after watching the play tonight, and what's up for you when you see it. You have to just turn it up. Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I am very, very moved. Of course, I already saw the play, but it brought me years, the worst years of, I have to say, of my life. Because when we started, we had this dream, to build City of Joy. And suddenly, we heard that Eve has a cancer. So I was like, we started this adventure together. And I didn't know how, to continue by myself. So like she said in the play, we were lying to each other because it was so difficult, to try to build something, with UNICEF. Like everything started with the UN. So it was like an impossible wedding, the UN and V-Day. But so she was fighting to live, and I was fighting to build the City of Joy. And I could build it because I knew that she's going to survive. And she survived because she knew that I was building City of Joy. So it was all connected.
So tell us a little bit what's going on. I mean, how many people, where are we now since the play, since 8 years? Give us some examples of what's happening.
Now we already have 1,028 graduated, from City of Joy. And we are creating a revolutionary network. So we will see the next. I'm not sure this year, but probably next year we will organize a huge meeting to see how we can change the country. And I want to talk also about a young woman you were talking about. Her name is Jane. You were talking about the 8 surgeries. So now she already had 11 surgeries. And she's not, I'm sorry to use the word, but she's not repaired yet. But she's one of the most courageous young women that I know, because she suffers all the time, but she's like, she is City of Joy, and she keeps us, all of us, both of us, doing what we do. And she's also one of the reasons we wake up every morning. And I think also one of the reasons Eve survived is because of the women of Congo. Because as she said, just to think about the women who don't have the chance, to have the chemio and to have doctors. We don't talk about cancer in Congo. We don't even have chemotherapy, not at all. So if you have breast cancer, they try to take out the breast, but by the time they make the surgery, it's too late. You have all the, you say metastases? You have all the metastases and everything. So sometimes you have to feel lucky to live in countries like this. And that's the only way she could survive. And I remember when she came back, I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, with all the doctors, they came back again.
No, 8 years ago.
No, they came back after.
Oh, the second time. The second time. Yeah.
So I remember we were eating together, and one of the doctors told us, and I have to say, thanks God we didn't know that before, that only 7% survived, from this cancer. Can you imagine? So Eve was part of the 7. So I was like, thanks God, we didn't know it before.
Well, I also want to just talk a little bit about Jane some more, because Jane is somebody who has one of the most horrible stories I've ever heard. It's actually in the City of Joy documentary, which is out, and it's going to be coming out really soon. I'll tell you where, but I can't tell you yet, but it's very exciting. And but one of the things I look at Jane, and I know we both talk about this, Jane has more joy. She has more joy than any person I've ever met in my whole life. And she's literally missing half, a good part of her body. But something's happened to her, like the transmission, whatever spiritual transmission has happened to, she literally is the most joyful person at City of Joy, helping every single woman who comes there. And I think there is a spirit at City of Joy that I want you to talk about, but I don't think I ever really understood joy until I came to City of Joy. Because joy has both grace and gratitude at its core, right? Gratitude is critical to joy. And I think for women who have been through what they've been through in the Congo to get to come to City of Joy, where they come for 6 months, 90 women, they get everything paid for, they get all their food, they get group therapy, they are loved, they are nurtured, they are healed, they don't have their children, they can't have their family, they just take care of themselves, and they take care of their trauma. And when they leave, they are literally like flowers that have bud into these just magnificent revolutionary leaders. And so talk a little bit about joy. What is joy in City of Joy? Because it's so both political and mystical at the same time.
Well, when you came to when you came to Congo, like in 2007, you asked the woman, at the hospital, what can I do for you? What do you want? And then they said that they wanted, a place for them to be empowered, to take back their own power, their bodies, the country, etc. And and then we asked them, so the name. So they were like City of Joy, and we were like, no, we can't name it City of Joy. Because, there's already a City of Joy in India. So they were like, so you're asking us, so we say it will be City of Joy. So how can you have joy, in a place like this? But now I know why. Because, City of Joy is not just blood and tears. That's also the place where I laugh the most in my life. Because all day long, we are talking about vaginas. I'm the director of the center, but in the morning when I come to work, it's like, hi, Mama Christine, how are you this morning? How is your vagina? This morning, not so well. My vagina is angry because I heard that another vagina is suffering. So that's the way we live at City of Joy, and that's the place, I think, on Earth where we talk the most about the vagina. And it's also due to the vagina monologue. Because at the beginning, my mother is Congolese. So until now, she can't pronounce the name vagina. I'm working for V-Day, but she can't pronounce the word vagina. When I was a child, she was like, did you take a shower? Did you wash there? So I knew the place. So, but now it's a revolution, because I remember when the war started and women from my mother's village, when they were raped, my mother came to me and then she was, well, we need antibiotics because, they were raped. But they couldn't go to a man doctor as a woman. How can you go and name a place, an organ? It was forbidden even to name. So they refused to go to men. And since you came to Congo, it was like a liberation, the freedom of the vagina. Really, I mean it. And wherever you go now, women talk about vagina, even children. When we drive in the middle of nowhere, children are coming and to say, oh, they rape a woman, talking about the vagina, and it's something new. So it's also the importance of the vagina monologue and how it impacts, the freedom of the la libération de la parole.
The liberation of the word.
Voilà.
But I think what also also Christine is talking about is that if you spend time at City of Joy, and I think it's, I have to say, I know it's a little braggy, but I think it's one of the most amazing programs I've ever seen, because it's based in a collective, communal, community-based way. Like, there's no individual therapy, for example. All therapy is in the group, because the theory is that when one person heals in the group, everyone is beginning to heal in the group, and nothing's separate than the community. And I think Dr. Mukwege, who was initially teaching it at City of Joy, when I met him, he said to me, I have been trying to get to talk about the vagina in the Congo since the war began, but everyone thinks I'm crazy. So he said to me, come and please talk about vaginas with me, because then I will not be the only person. And in the initial classes he did with the women, as a gynecologist and was teaching women about their bodies, it was amazing to see the work they did, where he would have them draw their vaginas and talk about the life of their vaginas and what happened to them. And by doing that, it really began to allow women to talk about their stories and what they had been through, because everyone who comes to City of Joy is a survivor of some kind of gender violence and serious violence. So talk a little bit about what the recovery process is like, and then what happens to women when they leave.
Well, our therapy is based on art. We are talking about art therapy. At the beginning, it was just therapy, but we just not discovered, the power of art, like theater, dance, singing. And as you know, in Africa, we live in community. That's how we have this community approach, like for the woman to be healed. And half of our program, it's therapy. And when the women leave City of Joy, they leave with a kit, and among the kit they have a cell phone, because they have social communication classes. So when they go back into their community, it's like we plant seeds of revolution. So they have a mission to bring, to share everything they learned at City of Joy, with the community, and to help. We're talking a lot about solidarity. And now, some of them, I have to say, they are organized in network, and they are partners of V-Day. So when we recruit women, they are the one who work with us. And some of them went back to school, and since then we bought a farm. We have a big farm.
It's a very big farm. It's the size of Central Park, wow. 350 hectares, where we're employing 200 people. And the women, some of the women now go after City of Joy. There's room for 40 women to live there, and
for 80
women. I'm sorry, 80 women. Yes.
Yeah, for 80 women to live there, and then we have for just an example, we already harvest more than 30 tons of rice, and we produce honey. We have
11
goats.
tilapia ponds. We have pigs. So that what's happening now is women are actually becoming agriculturalists. They're learning permaculture. They're learning all kinds of ways to work the land. First it was turning pain to power, and now it's turning pain to planting and power. And the whole theory being that when women actually can work in nature and treat the earth the way they want to be treated, they actually begin to heal as well. That is a simultaneous process.
Absolutely, and just to tell you that Congo is the second lung of humanity after the Amazonia. So if we don't protect also the environment, so it will be the end of the world. So also at City of Joy, we do have like a green class, to teach them, because Mother Nature was so generous in Congo and in Kivu, where I live. Like all year long we have vegetables, we have everything, we have the best climate on earth. And it was very important for us to teach the people how to give back to Mother Nature, and to protect. Like every year when we do the 1 billion rising, we plant trees at the farm, and we explain even to children the importance of protecting Mother Nature. Just to tell you a little story. For me, it was very difficult, to explain people, like a plastic bottle. That if you leave the plastic bottle, it will still be there in a 200 years. So I had to explain people, like some people who were never at school, why not to throw plastic bags. So I had to find a way. So one day I decided to organize a celebration, like to bury a bottle, when we had the first session. So we went there and I told them, today is the beginning of the session, and after 6 months we will go and see if the bottle is still there. So we went and we did it. We buried the bottle. And at the end of the session, it was still there. So I explained them, if you eat plastic, you will be
Suffocate.
Well, yeah.
But this is Christine's second language. She's doing amazing.
And then then you will have fever. So when I was talking about global warming, I was talking about fever because you cannot swallow, everything. And when you have fever, you start coughing. And then I remember I took the film of Al Gore to show people, to talk about, the tsunami and so people were like, oh my God. And it was like something happened that we have to protect Mother Nature. Because also the rain we have and all the climate is changing is so scary.
And I think also another piece of what's happening at City of Joy, I think when you change, Bukavu was once a very, very beautiful town. It was a very resort area that the Belgians, the colonizers, used and had vacations on while the people around them suffered. But what happened was, during the war, all the people had to leave the forest and leave where all was green, because that's where the war was happening, and they fled into Bukavu. So a town of 50,000 now has 1 million people living there, if you can imagine, and there's no jobs, and there's no employment, and there's no houses, and there's nothing. So we built City of Joy in the midst of this place. And it was kind of a really crazy thing to do, because it was kind of like, okay, we're building in the middle of a war zone, but this is what happens when you build a place of light begins to spread out, right? It's kind of like, well, then you need a mailbox on the corner, and then you need a store on the corner, and so tell a little bit about, we have this place around us, which was, I'm saying tent city is actually a huge leap up from what it really is. It's a ragged city of soldiers' wives who were abandoned and left there. And every time we would drive into City of Joy, we would look at each other and we would say, one day we have to address what's happening outside of City of Joy. Like, it has to be part of our community. So talk a little bit about how that's changed, how City of Joy has begun to influence what's happening around it.
Mm-hmm. Because, City of Joy is like a little heaven, like Eve said, like a lotus in the middle of the mud. And it was a little bit, we felt a little bit ill at ease, to be there and to have all the poor people around us. And you have to know that in Congo, when you go to war, when you're a soldiers, they go to war with wives and children. So what happened when the war started, they came with all the families, and most of the husbands died, but they never brought back, the widows with the children back home. So they lived there in the middle of the mud, with all the children abandoned, with hundreds of children. So every time we do something, we also do it for them. And last time Eve was there, so we decided to buy mattresses and blankets for each family. But I have to say, I never witnessed so much joy and gratitude just for a blanket and a mattress. You have no idea. It meant the world to them, and it made both of us, like we wanted to do to make more for these people. And I have to say that we also pay school fees for lots of children. There, some of them just come and eat at City of Joy. They're part of the movement.
And they feel deeply protective of City of Joy. The other day there was a leak or a thing. The entire community came and were part of the experience because they're part of our community. And I think what I'm certainly learning from this is that when you create one place of change in a community, you know, one spot where we serve 90 women every 6 months, right? That begins to change everything around it because people go, there's something possible. And then that person gets that light and that person gets that idea and then it begins to spread. Is there anything you want to else share about City of Joy that you feel like people should know, or the war, or what's happening in Congo?
Well, the situation, I mean the women's situation is still the same. Because as long as I will go to the hospital and see all the beds full, like with hundreds and hundreds of rape survivors, that means that the war is not over. Of course, they don't talk about you know, this war on television. I think you're too busy right now because every time I turn on the television here, it's about Trump. It's like I have even in Congo. If you turn every morning when I wake up, I'm like, so what did he say? What did he do this time? So I turn on my phone. It's like, oh, no news from Trump, no Twitter. It's like, I mean, it's. The world doesn't exist anymore. It's just about him and all these crazy dictators like the Duerte and the Trump, and I don't know where we are going. And that's also one of the reasons I think we have to focus on what we can do, you know, to change the world and to stop counting on countries like the US or European countries who just have interest in Congo. And that's why I believe in movements like V-Day, who I think did, I'm not saying it because I'm working for V-Day or because I'm part of the movement and Eve is here, but I worked for 13 years for one of the biggest institutions. And I think what V-Day did in Congo, it's much more than what all the institutions did, because you know when you give money to NGOs or institutions, first of all it goes to salary, and then to the comfort, like having a nice house and having a car with all the insurance, and when you travel you have to travel business and all these things. And 3/4 of the money goes there, and the rest goes to the poor people. And you tell the people what they have to do. And V-Day, they came and they asked people, what do you want? And the only thing they do with humility is they are just the wind behind our backs, and they let us do whatever we want. As long as we're happy, as long as the work has an impact. And yes, we are talking about sustainability. But before, you know, we had conferences talking about sustainability and strategize. So I kept my time, you know, strategizing, and at the end, what did we do? Everything we started to do collapsed when we left. So thank you for everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, merci to you. So what, do people have thoughts or questions, anything you want to ask? Just anything, yes.
How did your two husbands fit in all that you do?
What?
How did your two husbands fit in all this one?
I don't have a husband, so I didn't have that issue. Is that what your question is? How did your two husbands? Is that what you said? Oh.
You were married twice.
Oh, yes.
How did they fit in all your wonderful activities?
They didn't. That's why they're not here. Sorry. They've been gone a long time. Yes.
I understand that the rape and mutilation is continuing to go on in the Congo, correct? Is there any way of stopping that? Of altering the mindset of the military or whoever?
Can I just, and then it's an economic war. All of us are benefiting from the war in Congo every time we use our phones or computers. Coltan is a mineral that is very, very, there's lots of it in the Congo. There are multinationals hired by governments in conjunction with governments that go in. And you can describe it, I mean, you look at any village, what the tactic is, The militias go into the village, they go into a house, they rape the daughter, they have the husband rape the daughter, they have a son rape their mother, they destroy the family flees, the militias take over the house and they take over the mines. So rape is used as a tactic to secure economic booty. And as long as multinational corporations have access to the resources in the Congo, and that is both based on American interests, European interests, Congolese government interests, do you know what I mean? All of these people are involved, women will continue to be raped and destroyed. So it means all of us looking at what are we doing with our phones, to support this war that continues in the Congo. I'm sorry to
No, that's it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yes.
I just want to personally say thank you to you because when I was in federal...
Do you want to use this? Here.
I just want to personally say thank you to you, Eve, because when I was in federal prison, I wrote to you, finding out that A, you were sick, and B, that you were doing City of Joy, and there was an opportunity for all of us as you began to do your risings, but we couldn't rise up. And you wrote me back and you said, please rise up in writing. Use whatever it is and write to me and rise up and no one will know. And 114 women rose up. And you supported us in creating the joy and the space and the safety, because we didn't have to go to the Congo to feel the trauma that and to disrupt the pathways that led all of us there. So I thank you. I thank you from my heart for all of us who are now out here, and you inspired me to create a City of Joy right here in New York. So thank you.
Who else wants to, yes. Can you speak loudly if you want the microphone?
Yes, what about the education around all these? You didn't talk anything about education, kindergarten, schools.
The education of what?
Education can play a very big role for educate the people about all these problems.
Well, that's a lot of what City of Joy is doing. Do you want to talk about how City of Joy is educating people about the problem? Everything that we're doing through campaigns and educating women in their communities. You're talking about sexual violence, right?
These and by the schools, kindergartens,
Mm-hmm.
you can talk about the things and educate people for better future about talking about the problems.
Well, I think one of the great stories, I mean, there's a lot of educating happening because girls go back to their community and they really begin to talk to their communities and educate. But tell them the story about the Catholic Church that's joined forces with, which is so amazing.
Yeah, you know, Catholic Church is very powerful in Congo. And at the beginning, I didn't want to, to mix our work, with churches. And then our neighbors are priests from Xaverien, Italian priest. So we are very close friends. And one day they came and say, well, we want to know more about your work. What's the meaning of V-Day? So I started explaining. And then the priest, who is 70 years old, he was like, can I invite you to talk about your work in the church, with 2,000 women? I was like, Father, are you sure? And then he said, yes, because we need to talk about it. So I was like, okay. So we went to the church. It was full of women. He just invited women. It was full of women, more than 2,000. And then we had to explain the V. So he told me when I first said vagina, he was like, oh my God. Then I continue, and then he was like, oh my God. And then he told me when his head almost touched his feet, he was like, but when God created us, these are eyes, that's a nose. Why can't we talk about vagina? So now we are talking about vagina in the Catholic Church. And they are our best allies we have. So sometimes when they have they have people, you know, even couples with problems, they are like, go to Mama Christine, she will arrange everything. So I'm also like the sexologue of Pansy. I have to talk to couples, and it's really amazing and so helpful to work together. And talking about education, let's not talk just about Congo. What about your country? Are you talking about it? I'm not sure. So that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is, because nowadays, you know, young people, they discover sexuality with pornography. Even in Africa, for example, the mothers, they prepare the girls, you know, for the men, but nobody prepares the men for the girls. So it's like we are made for them, our mothers. So we all have to start the education, you know, like very early, wherever we are, not only in Congo.
Yes.
I'm a gynecologist here in New York City. Hello.
Hi.
And, I wrote a book called Menopause Confidential, and the chapter on vaginal health, which I have entitled "The Vagina is Like Las Vegas, Baby," starts with a quote by you, Eve. I didn't know really enough about your work, but I was looking for fun or interesting quotes about vaginas. And there you were, and now you're in Menopause Confidential.
Thank you. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to stop. Yes.
I was in the Congo in the 90s a couple of times, and there was another vaginal disease that was quite prominent there, HIV/AIDS. As a matter of fact, I think people used to say it originated in the DRC Congo. Is that still a major problem, or what's happened with the AIDS epidemic there?
Well, I remember the first case. The first case was in Bukavu. And I still remember the name of the guy, Mr. Baruti. And I remember I was much younger, but I remember that they told us that the disease was created because there were too many Africans and inoculated, you know, to people. So I grew up with these because it's very bizarre. I'm not a doctor, but like, you know, like you suddenly have a disease like this that we never heard about before. So I don't know, and now I have to say it's we do have lots of cases, you know, also with the rape and also with the religion, because we cannot use condoms, and in Congo you have to pay. It's very expensive, even if you want to use the condom. It's not for free. You have to pay it, and before you pay for a condom, you pay for food.
But I want to tell you a great story related to that. You know, in our first classes, girls, and I just want to close this story because I think, I don't know if you'll remember this story, but, you know, in the first classes, the girls really go through a huge transformational process, spiritually, intellectually, mentally, psychologically. And a lot of times when girls have been raped, I can speak as a survivor, your self-esteem is damaged, your value is damaged, you don't believe you're worth anything, you don't believe your body is yours, you give your body away without even knowing that you're giving it. So the process at City of Joy is people coming to value their bodies, and Dr. Mukwege would often say to women, you know, and Christine would say to women, and all the counselors would say to women, make sure you know who you're giving your body to. Analyze who do you want to give your body to, right? And why. So a group of girls came back after the first year, and we were all sitting around talking to them, and so Dr. Mukwege said to them, so, who's gotten married? Nobody raised their hand. Who's with somebody? Nobody raised their hand. And then they looked at him and said, you told us to only be with someone who was worth us, who had our value, and we're still looking. And to me, that was the proof of the pudding, that they had stood in their own value and were waiting for that person to arrive who could meet them. And to me, that is what City of Joy does. It creates women who go into the world knowing their power, knowing their leadership, and they have one of the greatest models on the planet. I mean, if you actually understood what Christine does every day, drive on roads that don't exist, make up water that doesn't exist, create invent medicine, invent love, invent remedies out of the air, and deal with, I think, the worst trauma on the planet, and yet the place is the most joyful place I've ever been. That is pretty phenomenal, but it comes out of love, and it comes out of devotion, and it comes out of politics, and it comes out of passion. And if you want to give to City of Joy, you can just go to City. This is not at all a plug, but we always appreciate anybody supporting us at cityofjoy.org. But I also want to say the way you can really help is go into your own communities who are being marginalized, where immigrants are being threatened, where people are being deported, where people are being put down, where people are being traumatized, right? And work there to protect people and not to create more trauma in the world so that people need more cities of joy, you know? And to think like, how do we build City of Joys everywhere? How do we create little centers of wellness and connection and joy and life and healing where people get better rather than creating more and more centers of pain and division? Thank you all so much, and thank you, Christine.